A very special episode of the challenge this week, Sheldon, which is suddenly an hour long. I don't know. I missed the 90-minute version.
No, I liked it because I think I like the fact that they didn't try to just fill it. I appreciate that. I didn't need the random.
That's fair.
Paulie thinks that he's the smartest person in the room. I didn't need any of that. I like that it was compact. I like how they just hit all the points they needed to hit. Showed me everything I needed to see. I don't feel like I missed anything. I don't feel like anything dragged. I liked it.
Well, let's fill our listeners' minds with our names and then thoughts and opinions on the challenge. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And my name is Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge, talking about War of the Worlds 2. Finally, someone does something smart. That's what this episode is about, Sheldon. But first, let's talk about dumb people.
Okay.
Kara is talking about how much she loves her alliance because it's so strong, and she's so glad that she is competing with so many strong female competitors on her team and in her alliance. I do have to say that I had a hard time with this little scene just because I feel like Kara would be singing a different song if Cam and Ashley and Ninja were competing against her rather than with her.
Yeah. I mean, they provided as a shield for her and Paulie, right? And so that's why she's happy. The weird thing to me is we all know from watching the show every week that the beginning scene is always teeing you up for something. It's always setting you up. And so I was kind of like, okay, someone's turning on someone here. But is it really, like, are they going to turn on Kara? Is that a possibility here? Is this where we're going? And I got a little bit excited, I can't lie. And then a little bit let down. Because that's not what happened. But on the flip side, you got a good conversation with Tori and CT. And I'll say this. I was tricked in this episode because I didn't think, like, what eventually ended up happening, I didn't think was going to happen. So I was getting mad. Though? I was getting mad when Tori's talking to CT about putting her in, and he's saying, wait, like, what? And she's making great points. She's like, why does it matter now? We're like a step away from the final. So why are you going to just throw me in? It makes no sense. And if we're going to win the challenge or lose the challenge, you're going to throw me in, then what's the difference? Like, she's making great points. And CT, well, he's saying, hey, I can't change now. These guys took me this far. And I was getting mad at him, right? I was like, no, this makes no sense, CT. Come on. But, hey.
It's hard to put a finger on it, but there was something in his manner, like the way that he answered, like was arguing with her, where I felt like, I don't know, I felt like that there was something coming down the pike.
Yeah, I didn't. He threw me off the scent for sure. Because when she said, so does it matter if we win or lose then? Like, what's the point? What's going on then? At that point, when he was still talking about numbers, and I was like, really, CT? Like, why do you have to do that? That doesn't make any sense. And then when she asked the other people, and Dee and Rogan were both like, oh no, I agree with exactly what CT said. I was kind of like, oh, you idiots. What the hell? I was fooled. Can't lie.
But, I mean, as you said, Tori was making a really good case.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's amazing how hard a time Rogan and Dee in particular can't see that they're being set up to fail. Like, you do not win $1 million if your team doesn't win the final.
Tori,
like, that's all there is to it.
And Tori would help your team win in the final, which you have to know you're pretty close to, right? But, you know, you got to know you're kind of close. And I think that played a role in CT's ultimate decision because you know you're close, so you don't really know how many more challenges you have before the final, but you got to know that it's close. And so I think getting to see how they did in this challenge, because the other part was I thought, okay, well, they're going to throw it. That's what I thought was going to happen, because if they're saying it doesn't matter anyways, what's the point in trying really hard? And let's say they do win, right? And then you're going to throw in Tori anyways. That kind of would seem, that would be like the dumbest move ever. And there's been a lot of dumb moves this season. But if they actually won this final challenge and then threw in their best girl, a play like one event before the final, right? That would have been by far the dumbest move of the season, right?
Yes. Well, while we have a moment, how's this for a segue? Last episode of You Killed It, we asked people what is the worst gameplay we've ever seen, and we got some responses. Let's read them now.
Okay.
Roy Lee's intern, who is a long-time listener, often comments on our stuff. We really appreciate their feedback, which is pretty regular, tweeted, as someone who hasn't, quote-unquote, proved himself, Rogan still hasn't been to elimination despite how many times the UK has lost. Mm-hmm. There were plenty of opportunities to vote him in, but he gathered the numbers. To me, that's good political gameplay. So Roy Lee's intern here is defending Rogan, who we were shitting on.
That's a valid point. I mean, it's not wrong. It's factually correct, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, but here's the thing. I would say that happened in spite of Rogan.
Yeah, like, and I'd also add that the whole point of the challenge is to win, not to make it to a final. Also, right? Like it's not good enough to get to the goal line. You have to cross it.
But go back to what I was saying before, right? A couple episodes back. I don't remember now which one it was because they made such a consistent theme of making terrible decisions. But at one point I remember we had a long conversation where I said, I don't think that Rogan's goal was to necessarily win the challenge. It was just to make it kind of far so that he wouldn't be known as a guy that gassed out in the very first scene of a season.
Yep. Yeah, I guess so. And maybe my criticism, to be very specific, of Rogan is that he did not adjust his strategy.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Last night, Aiden Naj tweeted at us, "Hey guys, long-time listener, first-time tweeter here. In regards to competitors who had a worse challenge run than Joss this season, it took some thinking, but it's for sure Chet from Free Agents. He was the captain of his team for the first challenge, completely blew it at the first sign of pressure, and then forfeited the elimination because of the cut on his chin, all in the first episode. That's some weak sauce." I totally forget. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. That's a good point. I mean,
yeah, that was
can't argue with that.
Bad. I completely forgotten about it, and it definitely that was one of those classic times where TJ Lavin just lit into a competitor because. So for those who don't remember, Chet's argument was that he wanted to go into TV and become a celebrity.
Yep.
And he had a gash on his chin, and they were either you can compete or you can get stitches, and he was worried that it would
scar.
That would scar, which completely he obviously wasn't thinking about the fact that scars look super cool, and decide to opt out of competing rather than actually get sewn up. It was not a good look.
Yeah. Terrible, Kenny. Terrible.
There was another tweet that I was going to read, but now I can't find it.
Well,
here, I found it. Unbent Flow tweeted at us, "I submit Corey's hit list season for consideration of worst political maneuvering. I know how to read. Of worst political maneuvering. That was also super bad."
Yeah, that wasn't good, but at least I kind of understand what Corey was trying to do. He was trying to make a splash and be like, hey, I'm a rook, but I don't fear any of you guys. I'm coming in and I'm going to make a splash. I'm going after all the big dogs. Now, the way that he went about it, in terms of letting everyone know, wasn't smart. But at least I can kind of understand his game plan and his thought process that, hey, for me to win, I got to go through all these people. So let me try and go through all these people. And I know he didn't win, but on some level, what do you think about the way that he went at it as opposed to Paulie, who wants to hide behind the numbers? Now, Paulie might be more effective, or definitely more effective, right? He got himself into the final. But at the end of the day, which one was better? Which one was more entertaining? Which one would you rather do? Which one do you respect more? Which one did you enjoy watching more?
I think, that's tough. I think part of the problem with Corey's strategy, like I do hear what you're saying, but I think part of the problem with Corey's strategy was that he didn't back it up.
For sure.
Like, if he had, like, called his shot like that and then actually, like, took some of them out, even if he didn't get all of them out, you would have been like, oh, shit, that is baller as fuck. But instead, you're like, oh, you're a bit of an idiot.
And he kept getting thrown in against Nelson, right?
Yes.
Or Tony, or it was people on his side of the house, right?
Yeah, it was not bad. It was not good.
Not a good strategy. Definitely not a good strategy. And again, I'm saying two different things, right? So the one side is obviously Paulie's is more effective, but from a viewer standpoint, which one do we enjoy watching more? That's all I'm saying.
Yes. Anyway, let's get back to the show. The competition, this week's episode, I should say. This week's episode the daily competition, that's what I'm trying to say, is Mind the Cart. So the format's pretty simple. Each team puts a male and a female in each cart, which is like a mine cart suspended above water. Classic falling into water challenge competition.
Correct.
And they have to pull themselves across the ropes, retrieving medallions and putting them onto a carabiner at one end of the rope. At the same time, competitors are swimming beneath them to retrieve a saw and cut down their opponents. So, in other words, if a member of the British team swims, gets a saw, and cuts down their opponents, the Americans fall, and it gives the Brits more time to collect more medallions. Because the Americans have more players than the Brits still, two of the American women don't get to compete, and one player from the Brits gets to do all the swimming, and because Jordan is sort of by default the best swimmer on the show, Jordan's going to do all the swimming for the Brits.
Yeah. So this
how did that go for them, Sheldon?
Well, this ended up being a huge advantage for the Brits, right? Because Jordan being a super strong swimmer, but on the flip side, because the U.S., not only did they have more people, but now, because swimming was such a huge portion of it, there were people that you were not going to put in that position. So you're limiting the numbers even more. And forcing in someone in the swimming, like Cara had to go multiple times, which is not something that you would normally do. I mean, you would argue, would you even have Cara go once? Because she's not that good of a swimmer, right? So
yeah,
it ended up playing, like, the strategy and the way that the end of the season played out really was beneficial more so to the UK than it was to the US team. Because Jordan killed it, right? Jordan
crushed
like he
it.
Was, yeah, he was pacing himself. He beat Ashley by a lot on the first go-around. And I honestly thought that at some point the UK team was going to throw it. So it made me wonder, like, did something happen after they threw the challenge, like a couple challenges ago, where it was like, listen, you can't throw challenges anymore? Or something, just because, I don't know, it just was a weird, it was a weird scene, because I was wholeheartedly expecting them to throw it, but at the other rate, how would you throw it? Do you know what I mean? Because you're up there, and unless Tori is not in there, and it's Dee and whoever, and they just kind of sit up there, I guess that's how you would throw it, but I'm glad that they didn't.
I think someone, I can't remember who, but someone on one of the other major challenge podcasts, like Challenge Mania or something.
Mm-hmm.
One of the like current competitors was interviewed, and they said that they now get fined if they get caught throwing a challenge.
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
Yeah. So like when CT very obviously threw his that challenge, like he did it knowing he was going to get fined.
Oh. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I guess after you take one fine, you're not going to take another. So that explains a lot. Mm-hmm. See, we're informative as well. I like that. So we know that Jordan did his job, right? And the other thing to be amazed at how well Jordan does things despite having one hand. He was doing work with the saw as well. So got to give him credit for that. And it really was an easy win for the UK, no?
Yeah, they won pretty easily. The final score was 16-11. Not really in doubt, even from that first one. Like, I kept score throughout. Like, early on, Tori and Rogan beat Paulie and Cam 7-4. So already a 3-medallion lead.
Yeah.
And then CT and D only collect 5, but Nani and Leroy only collected 3 against them. So then it's a pretty easy walk to finish it off. It's notable that when Nani and Leroy fell, did you see that Lee's shoe just like flew off of his foot?
Yes.
And Nani says, like, this is her 8th season. She has fallen into a lot of water. And she says it's the worst fall she's ever taken. Like, the way they get dumped out, because you almost have to go, like, back first, the way it, like, drops. Like, there were some tough landings that they were taking.
Yeah, it was a tough fall. A very tough fall. And, again, the way I would love a behind-the-scenes, and this is just because I'm a nerd, but I would love a behind-the-scenes on how they put together these challenges. Right, like just how they plot it out, the people that have to test it out, when they figure out, like, oh, we can't do that. That doesn't work. Like, who are the stunt coordinators? You know what I mean? Because some of those falls, I was like, holy shit, like, that'd be so hard. But yeah, no, good challenge. I enjoyed it in that sense. And the other thing that we like about this show, John, is when they throw curveballs. So the curveball here, obviously, because you know you're getting down to the nitty gritty, it was, okay, cool. The UK team won, which means the US team has to nominate someone to go into the elimination, right? But they had to vote right on the spot.
Yeah.
And
which isn't hard for the Americans, because they all knew that they want to vote in Nani.
Yes. Right? And so, and even with Leroy burning his vote, right? Or thinking that he was burning his vote, I guess. It still meant that Nani was going in. And so on the flip side, on the UK team, they had to decide who was going to be in the tribunal. And I was curious about this because obviously, you know, it's not going to be, I didn't think it was going to be Jordan or Tori, because that would obviously mean that Tori would be safe, right?
Yeah.
So it ends up being CT, and then CT gives this speech about, you know, I think it's about time that we change things around here and we start focusing on who our team is and protect our team. So I'm going to pick Tori and Rogan. I was stunned. Like, in the moment, were you stunned? Did you see it coming? Like, what was your take there?
I was stunned. First of all, I should say, I was already, as longtime listeners know, you and I listen or watch the show first thing in the morning and then record the podcast. And I was already freaking out because I'd been, like, fast forwarding through commercials. And I was like, is this a 60-minute episode? Did, like, my PVR only record the first 2/3? So, although like I said, I sort of was like, CT, like, when he was having that conversation about strategy with Tori, I was like, I'm not fully buying what CT's saying. Like, I did feel like he was going to stab like his alliance in the back.
Okay.
So like I was like already sort of like thrown off because of the timing and how early this was happening and everything. But then as he started to make this speech, I was like, wait, what? This is great. And he said, I've had enough of this game. Let's go get this money. And like, I like that he like turned to basically Rogan and D and is like, we are not voting in a team member. And what is shocking is that if you look at Rogan and D's faces, they fully intended to vote in Tori.
Yeah.
Like, they are that brainwashed by Paulie and Cara that they would, in an event where they had won and they have the opportunity to make it easier to win $1 million, they're still like, yeah, we gotta get rid of Tori. And I love Zach's commentary this season has been great. He goes, Agreed. Here he is. I want to introduce everyone to CT. And it was also amazing how angry D was. Because, like, D automatically assumed that she was going in. Even after he just finished making a speech about how no Brits were going in.
I think she was confused.
I mean, I'm just going to be frank. Rogan and D are not very intelligent people. Like, they have such a hard time wrapping their heads around very basic concepts, and to ask them to like make decisions quickly is even more difficult.
So you fully believe that Rogan didn't know about this?
No. Never in doubt, and I can keep my sunglasses on to say that as well. So CT votes for Ninja. We got to break down the votes. This is too good. And then we both stopped talking. CT votes for Ninja.
I was honestly, once it went silent, I was like, let me see how long this is going to go for.
Okay.
So CT votes for Ninja. Tori votes for Ashley. And it comes down to Rogan. And Rogan is like stressing hard. And I mean, is it that difficult of a decision if you're Rogan? Do you know what, like, I didn't understand why it was such a difficult decision, but Rogan ends up picking Ashley, and then he's, like, rattled about picking Ashley, who doesn't take it well, obviously. The look on Kara's face was amazing, and Ashley's basically telling him to get the F away from her, saying, now you're fucked, she's still rich. Like, there's a lot going on here. But did Rogan make the right choice?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, Dee's already gonna hate him forever.
I don't think she hates him anymore, though. It seemed like everything was just totally fine.
I guess so. We did have a listener question about this voting situation, though.
Okay.
Mitchell asks, did they ever explain what would happen if the tribunal voted 3 separate ways? Surprised that it didn't happen at all this season.
True. No, they didn't. But I think you don't even want to go down that lane, right? Because didn't we see, was it last season maybe, where it gets opened up and then anybody's available to go in?
Yeah,
and then it comes in some random vote, and yeah, you don't even want to play that game.
No. The other question that I had is, if you're going to shoot your shot, as CT is doing here, are Ninja or Ashley the best choices?
Well, this was the thing that I was thinking about, right? Because I think the part that everyone misses about what CT did here was, sure, he could have thrown Tori back in, right? And Tori probably wins and comes back. But how does that help the team unity going into the final?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that's the part that everyone kind of missed. Like, it's great that we think Tori might have come. She probably would have come back anyways. But at least you're as a squad now, you're kind of together. You have like this rallying cry, like, yes, we're together. We're finally a team. So to further your point, it would have been interesting for them to be like, let's throw in Cara. Right? Like, wouldn't that have been interesting? That would have been
That's my point.
That would have been pretty good.
Wouldn't you want to take a run at like Cara, maybe Cam? Like I really like Ashley, and I think she is a very good competitor. But I don't know that she's the best competitor of the females left on the American team. So, like, if you're going to shoot your shot...
That's interesting, though, because I'll say this. If she's not the best, she's pretty close. Like, it's pretty even, right? Like, and I think she holds more clout because she's actually won. Even though I don't think that, you know, I don't want to diminish her victory, but it's not like last year's final, right? Like, that wasn't the final that she won. Mind you, she won, and it was a good win, but you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the one thing I might say is that CT's logic might have been, who can Nani potentially beat?
Yeah, that's fair.
So you vote to get like Nani versus someone she might beat, so that you continue to have like discord on the American side. Yeah, the other interesting thing is that Tori and CT didn't vote the same way.
Yeah, which means that this wasn't a plan. This was something CT was doing on his own.
Yeah. I'm very confident that he's doing this on his own.
Yeah. No, agreed.
Speaking of which...
Ashley's not happy.
No, yeah, you should talk about that. Ashley's not happy.
No, I just thought it was funny. I'm always here for the Ashley temper tantrums, because like they're just really funny, and you know Rogan was legit terrified of Ashley. You could tell that. I thought that was pretty funny. But what I was going to ask you is, and I think I know the answer, but you think CT took the right move, right? Like he shot his shot. That was the right move.
Not only was it the right move, it was beautifully timed.
Yeah.
Like, he did it at the exact right time, because TJ says, all right, Ashley and Nani, you're coming with me. You're like, we're going to disappear for a bit. The rest of you are in the final.
Yeah.
Like, no more eliminations. So, like, it's the perfect timing. There's no retribution, right? Like, he took his shot as well as he could. He said it himself, $1 million right around the corner. Mm-hmm. And then I love that they're back in the house, and Paulie says, I know for a fact Rogan was involved in it. Oh, how do you know that? It's funny.
He's got footage, man. He's got footage.
It's funny. Dear listeners, Sheldon and I often talk about our industry as reporters when we're not recording. So, like, we'll call each other, we'll have a little discussion.
Yes.
And then we will announce that we're recording, so that we don't say anything on the record that we don't want on the record. Correct. And then we start recording the podcast. So we were just discussing the importance or the difference between what you know and what you can prove. Mm-hmm. And Paulie can't prove or know that Rogan was in on it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's no way he knows, but he's just talking...
But hold on.
He's talking out of his ass, but...
As you mentioned, though, he did take off his glasses to make sure.
Yeah,
so
that's
I don't
true.
know. I don't know.
He's saying, I know for a fact that Rogan was involved in it, in front of D, who obviously immediately goes and tells Rogan. And Rogan decides to, like, go over to him and be like, just so you know, I definitely did not know at all. And Paulie was foam rolling with a toque and sunglasses on, you know, as normal people do. And as Rogan's trying to make his case to tell him that he wasn't involved, Paulie takes off his sunglasses to show that he's super serial, and is, like, giving him, like, serious eyes. This is the Paulie that we know. Like, this is the Paulie from previous seasons. Like, takes himself too seriously, is super serious,
and he's like, "Let me look at you in the eyes while you say this." And it's just like, get out of here. And to me, the interesting part was the Rogan's confessional, where Rogan says, I'm not dumb. Like, I know what Paulie's been doing in terms of keeping him safe, but also trying to keep them weak. And I wonder when Rogan actually figured that out. Because,
I mean, Rogan's just a plastic bag floating in the wind. Like, he is just going with the flow at best.
Okay.
Like, I mean, the thing about Paulie's claim that Rogan was involved in it is he's missing the very important point that how will CT or Rogan or D or Tori or Jordan win $1 million if they're not on the stacked U.S. team? Like,
yeah,
an alliance is only as useful as it remains useful to you. Like, even let's say, for argument's sake, that Rogan was involved in it. Then it's a smart move by Rogan.
Finally.
Right? Finally some interest. But as I said, he has, like, the backbone of a chocolate eclair. Like, he does not, like, Rogan is not in control of the situation at all.
Yeah.
So, like, it doesn't matter if Rogan's on board. He's just going with it. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah, it was just funny. And I love, so he goes and he's telling CT about how weird it was, the conversation he had with Paulie, and CT says he's glad that he did it. But again, like, what was the other option? Like, it would have made no sense to throw back in Tori, right?
No.
To go against someone else. And to be honest, I don't know how it makes sense from the U.S. side either. Like, if they had thrown in Tori and it's like, okay, cool, we're putting in Nany, like, how does that even benefit them?
Yeah.
Right? So
CT, when he's chatting with Rogan outside, for a second I thought CT was smoking. Like, I swear I saw some cigarette smoke float by him. But anyway, he says to Rogan, I kind of feel like I just mugged the U.S. team. I mugged them for $1 million. Which made me think, Sheldon, did you know that South Boston is the bank robbing capital of the United States?
Yeah, haven't you seen what's that movie with Affleck? And is it Jeremy Renner?
Yeah, what is that movie called? It's the most Boston movie ever.
Yeah, why am I drawing a blank?
The
John
Town.
Hamm.
The
John
Town.
Hamm's a cop.
It's
The
The Town.
Yeah, that's what it is.
The most Boston movie ever made. I won't spoil it for listeners, but if you have not seen it, think of, like, Good Will Hunting, but if instead of going to Harvard, it was robbing banks.
Oh, man. So, yeah, we end up getting this Nany versus Ashley in what they're calling a super elimination. Right? And it's run for your life. Basically, it's a puzzle. You got to run 2 puzzle pieces up a hill, run back down, get the other 2 puzzle pieces, run them back up the hill, and then complete the puzzle. Right?
Yep.
And the whole time while this was happening, all I was thinking was, man, Tori would have dusted these 2, right?
Yeah.
That's all I was thinking the entire time. Ashley lost her way. They were both, like, walking at multiple points. And in fairness to them, especially for Ashley, like, Ashley did a swim earlier, so I could understand if you were a little bit tired. And even, forget about the swim, even the sawing, that would have taken a toll on your forearms. But even if you were in the challenge or the other part, like you're in the actual mine car, that also was taking a lot of upper body strength. So I can understand that. Although, did Nany even compete?
Yeah, she was in one of the mine cars.
Yeah, she fell. She fell with Leroy, yes. So I can understand how you'd be somewhat tired already before having to do this, like, crazy long mountain run. So, cool. They kind of realize at some point that they're right around the same pace, and so it just became a race of who could finish the puzzle first. And I honestly thought that Ashley was going to lose when she gave her confessional and she said, Nany isn't very smart, and I've never lost a puzzle before, so I'm feeling good. At that point, I actually thought that Nany was going to win.
Yeah, that for a second, I was like, uh-oh. Hubris before the fall. But what ends up happening? Ashley finishes in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, Ashley essentially looks at it as like, oh, I understand this completely. Like, she's like Johnny Mnemonic. She unveils it, and she actually got to it after Nani.
Yep.
She takes the burlap off, unveils it, sees that sort of like a Sudoku grid, sees that there's like a total of 10 lines on the like pieces of sheet metal that are already up, and she's like, oh, it has to add up to 10 in all directions. And she just like puts it up, and she's like, time, called it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think TJ was even ready, and he's like, Ashley, you got it. That's it.
Yep.
And Ashley announces, I peed myself on the way up. And I have to ask you, Sheldon, imagine losing a puzzle competition to someone who just peed themselves. And then having to hug them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one for sure. Definitely a tough one.
Isn't that like the worst case scenario?
Yeah, I mean, in Nani, I felt bad for her as well. Like, she mentioned it was, her 8th or 9th challenge, something like that.
Yep.
And to lose right before the final, that's a tough break. So there was part of me that felt bad for Nani. But what did you think of her saying that she hopes the U.S. team loses now? And she hopes the U.K. team wins? Like, isn't she friends with Leroy? Like, doesn't she want Leroy to win?
And she's friends with Zach. But
True.
I guess sour grapes.
True. Petty is definitely a theme of 2019, so that's fair.
Yes, it is. So, Ashley, this didn't even occur to me, but TJ points out that since Ashley won an elimination, she can switch teams. And I don't know, it really seemed like she considered switching to the Brits.
I honestly think that she should have switched to the Brits.
Yeah, I think so,
they had the better team. No?
Yeah.
Am I wrong here?
I think they have the better team. If she were to switch sides, the numbers are then balanced.
Okay.
Right? Because the heading into today, or this week's episode, the U.S. had 2 extra players.
Yep.
So subtract Nani and subtract Ashley and add Ashley to the Brits.
Yeah, 6 on 6.
6 on 6. And, like, you got to question the mental toughness of the Americans. Like, I don't think Cara is particularly mentally tough. Paulie can get under people's skins. Zach is an unhappy camper, whereas, like, the Brits, they, I think, can get along better, right? Like, Tori and Jordan are, like, super tight, obviously. They're, like, loving CT right now. Your biggest concern would be D.
But Dee's obviously shown that she's at least going to give her all, and she's not going to give up. And I just think that if I'm Ashley and I look at it, okay, I guess when it really comes down to it, in a way more simplistic form, I was going to go on this whole tangent about how, like, break down each player and all that, and, like, player for player, I think the UK is just better. But way more simplistically, I think Ashley just chose with her heart instead of her brain.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't like Jordan and Tori for whatever reason, so she didn't want to join their team. I think that's all it came down to. Because let's be serious, right? No, sorry.
I was just going to say, that's like a good enough reason. Like, if you don't want to work with someone, like, that's fine. That's good enough cause.
But the problem is now you still have to work with Zach, and you don't really like Zach.
Nope.
Right? So, I mean, I guess she's friends or is cool with everyone else on their team, but what does that really mean? I don't know. So she makes her decision. You get conversations of both sides trying to figure it out. Zach's mad because he's thinking how much this would have been such an easy win for the U.S. team had they not, just spent so much time trying to get Jordan and Tori out.
Yep.
Which is true. And
yep.
It just goes to show to me how smart of a move it was for Jordan and Tori to switch teams.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Absolutely.
Now the U.S. spent so much time weakening their team without Jordan and Tori, but now when you combine that and now they're just working together, and you're on the other side with CT, who's a challenge vet, and whatever CT has left in the tank, you know that he's going to give his all, right? He might not be in the best shape still, but I still like their team better than the UK team. I do. And especially when it comes to swimming, because you know there's going to be a swimming portion of it. You know there's going to be a strength portion of it. Eating matters as well. We know that's always comes down to it in the final. And are you willing to just eat anything? You know Kara's a bad eater. Paulie, I don't think, is going to want to eat stuff. I don't know. It's just very interesting to me how this is going to play out. And if there was a Vegas line, like gambling odds, I'd be betting on Team UK to win.
Me too, and I'm definitely cheering for them.
Totally.
At this point. There's one more scene, which I have some thoughts and comments on. And that is, they're all celebrating. They're at the quote-unquote club, which is clearly just sort of a shitty bar. And Rogan and Dee are sexy dancing. Yep. And Rogan says, like, I've proved that I can make it to a final. But, like, has Rogan proved that? Or has he proved that he's good at being a pawn? Like, he basically got carried to the final by numbers, by the manipulations of Paulie and Kara. Like,
I mean, he's factually correct, right?
He is factually correct. He can make it to a final. But, like, I don't feel like he did it by his own master stroke or anything.
No, I mean, I do want to give him some credit because he did actually make it to a final. Like, however we want to slice it, somehow, as much as Paulie made it to a final without touching an elimination, so did Rogan.
Yep.
Right? So, I mean, on some level, he's able to make it to the final and still have D. I don't know how he pulled that one off. But I know what you're saying. Though. Like, but I think we're grading on the unfair bar of Jordan, right? Yeah. Jordan and Tori, like, earned their way to a final, right? I know what you're saying. And there are a lot of people that didn't touch eliminations, right? Cam never hit an elimination. Kara never hit an elimination. Zach never hit an elimination. Ashley just now hit an elimination.
CT never went into elimination.
Right? And so there's a lot of people that didn't hit the elimination floor. And Paulie bragging about how much he masterminded the game, I thought was kind of interesting, which, you know, maybe I won't step on yet because we want to get to who the MVP is. But Paulie bigging himself up is kind of interesting to me, right? Because I feel like there were other people who, even if you think Paulie was running the game, there are other people who played just as, if not a better game than Paulie.
You know what? I'm going to disagree with you there. I think Paulie has played a good game.
I'm not saying that he didn't play a good game. I would just argue that I think CT might have played an even better game.
Yeah, that could be the case. And, like, I think it's fair to say that CT had a harder hill to climb.
For sure.
Right?
And you got to look at it, too.
He was on a team where he only knew Kyle, who's, like, persona non grata with everyone. He had to, like, ride the politics of his team and, like, the house in general, like, and avoid an elimination week after week. Like, I think they played equally good games, but that CT was faced with a greater challenge, which is more impressive.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I just think that, you know, Paulie masterminding it, obviously, and keeping himself and Kara safe while controlling the other team and dwindling their numbers. Paulie did a great job. I don't even want to take anything away from Paulie. I just think what CT did and ending it with the move that he just pulled off, I think he did a great job, because the other part of it is, while Rogan is talking about numbers and how they took care of him the whole season, and CT alluded to that as well, CT really didn't take a side until he actually had to. And that that only lasted, what, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's and again, from the starting point of where he was at in terms of being the only American to be put onto the UK team, dealing with all that dysfunction, dealing with all the different personalities, having to deal with the messed up alliance within that side of the house, right? And not taking a side. Remember, it was like him and Idris and how weird some of those deliberations went, where it was definitely a numbers game and he tried to stay out of it for as long as possible, and he did. To now be in the final with arguably the stronger team because you realize, oh shoot, I can't even risk putting Tori in an elimination now because I'd want to have her on my team when I run a final. I don't know. CT killed it for me.
Oh, you're declaring it now that
I am
for the season.
I am. CT killed it in this episode for me because that was a smart play. It was a smart play, and he did it on his own, and he manipulated the game to get himself to a final and somehow ended up on the team where, you know, and obviously not all of this was done because of him. Tori and Jordan joining up on the team wasn't his doing, but he made the situation work for him.
Yeah. Well, we are in agreement. I think CT killed it this week just because finally someone on the British team made the right decision and recognized that for them to win the money, their team has to win the final. So yep. I'm glad that finally someone opened their eyes to this reality. And at the episode wrapped with Zach sort of recapping and saying like, hey, this is like the Brits have the better team now because of ego on the American team. And I have to agree. Like, I think that the Brits are the favorites. Not like on paper, I think the Americans are still very good. Like, it's going to be a very interesting competitive final. But I do think that the Brits have momentum on their side. I don't think that the Americans are in a good place mentally, right? Like, I think Cara is really anxious and worn out. Mm-hmm. I think that it's very easy to imagine Zach yelling at Ninja, Paulie yelling at Ashley. Like, I could see this falling apart quickly. So,
totally. And you know already, right, that Ninja isn't, she'll get flustered, and like teamwork is definitely going to be a thing in this final, as it always is. Zach, let's be honest, doesn't really work well with others. Like, we're surprised when he does.
Yeah.
Right?
Everyone is.
Totally. Whereas you look at the flip side, Rogan's going to play his position, Dee's going to play her position, and then obviously having Jordan on the team with Tori kind of at least gives you the hope that Jordan will chill out a little and not be a jerk, right? Like, they'll work well as a team. That's the assumption anyways. But also, you know there's going to be a swimming portion of this. And, hey, I got to trust a team that doesn't have the slowest swimmers. And Ninja can't swim. Leroy is not the strongest swimmer. Neither is Cara. Neither is
Cam.
So, I don't know. That's going to be a tough one. And, again, it's just experience running finals. And Tori, we know that Tori is in shape. We know that Jordan is in shape. We know that CT's run multiple finals, even though he might not be in shape. And I don't know. Again, betting odds, I'm going with Team UK. But, of course, it's a challenge. And in eliminations, in finals, there's always twists and turns that you can't account for. So, who knows?
I'm excited, though. I'm curious. I've seen a lot of people talking on the Facebook challenge group and elsewhere that they're not enjoying this season.
Really?
Have you enjoyed this season?
I definitely have enjoyed this season a lot. And I feel like I enjoyed it a lot because there wasn't the needless like drama stuff. There wasn't that much of it. Like in terms of like relationship drama stuff, there wasn't that much of it. And I like that for the most part, it was about the challenges, the competitions, and the strategy. And I'm big on the strategy side of things. And so as much as, I just dissed Paulie, he had great strategy in the way that they strategized the game. And, even going back to the start of the season, the bad strategy, we can say, put on by Laurel and Johnny Bananas, that was a focal point of the show. And it wasn't about, oh no, Paulie and Cara are arguing again, and are they going to break up, and this person now is cheating with this person, and it wasn't a lot of that, which I think is what grabs a lot of like casual viewers. And having all these people return back to the house, I think they were expecting more explosives.
Yeah.
But I liked it. And think about it. We got to this point, 12 episodes of an hour and a half, and I only thought it dragged once during an episode. Yeah. That's pretty good for hour and a half episodes a whole year.
I think part of it is I've enjoyed it. Like, I've liked the politics and the drama, but it's not, so far it hasn't been very satisfying. You know what I mean? Like, to think in terms of good guys and bad guys. The good guys haven't really won. Like, the good guys, such as they are hanging on. Yep. Like, and it's been a frustrating season to watch in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But it's still been very entertaining. So I think what's throwing people is that either their favorites are not winning, or they're frustrated by watching how some of the gameplay has gone down.
And you know what I think is yes, definitely I think you're right. And consistently throwing in not only good players, but people with challenge legacies, right? So you would assume a lot of people would have been cheering for Wes, would have been cheering for Bananas, would have been cheering for Laurel. And to have all of them just go out, right? And then even on the flip side, even if they don't have legacies, Bear being around is entertainment. Georgia being around is entertainment. Right? So I think like that side of it as well, having those characters not be on the show might have, hurt, let's say, the extra oomph on the fastball, right? Mm-hmm. You're not getting the like 101 mile an hour fastball, but it's been consistent 93s, if that makes sense. Right. I don't know if that analogy works out, but you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. You're saying that they're a Tom Glavine, not a Randy Johnson.
Yes, it's not as flashy, but still effective.
Yeah. Where can the good people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And you know what, people? Look up the You Killed It podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, on SoundCloud and iTunes, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Hey, we're here, man. We're here. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Rate us. Rate us, people. Those things are important.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JChidleyHill. And we're both constantly tweeting about the Raptors because that's how we do.
Yeah, work is hectic, yes.
And the National Lacrosse League season, Sheldon, as I'm sure you know, begins on Friday. So I'll be tweeting about lacrosse as well.
I feel like I saw the commercials. I feel like I've seen commercials on TV. So yes, I think I did know that.
Yeah. You follow lacrosse. You're cool. You get it. Until next week, this was You Killed It.
You Killed It.